Before Xal'atath came for Azeroth, another world heard her promise salvation. That world was Karesh, and almost no one survived it. For years, World of Warcraft players knew Xal'atath as a voice in a dagger, a whispering artifact, a thing that spoke with too much confidence, too much patience, and too much delight in being underestimated. She sounded like a servant of the void. Then she escaped the blade. Then she took a body. Then she began moving through the World Soul Saga like she had been waiting for this exact age of Azeroth to arrive. But the most dangerous question is not what Xal'atath wants from the Sunwell. It is what she learned before she ever reached Azeroth. Because the story of Karesh changes the shape of her entire threat. It suggests that Xal'atath is not only a mastermind using the void. She may be something older, angrier, and much more personal, a survivor who learned how to turn doomed worlds into weapons. Or worse, a liar who discovered that tragedy is the easiest mask for domination. Karesh was the homeworld of the Ethereals. Before they became wandering energy beings wrapped in bandages and trade contracts, they were a people with a world, a sky, cities, histories, and a future they expected to keep. Then Dimensius came. Dimensius the All-Devouring was not just another monster from the dark. He was a void lord, a cosmic hunger that did not merely conquer planets. He consumed them. When he turned his attention toward Karesh, the world did not just face invasion, it faced erasure. The Ethereals tried to survive by shielding themselves. They raised arcane barriers against the void storm, swallowing their planet. But survival in Warcraft is rarely clean. The shield saved them from immediate destruction, but the cost was horrifying. Their bodies unraveled, flesh became energy. A people who had once been physical were transformed into the beings we know now, brilliant, wounded, untethered from ordinary flesh, and fundamentally displaced. They did not become ethereal because it was beautiful. They became ethereal because their world was dying, and somewhere inside that catastrophe, Xal'atath appears. The new lore around Supremacy frames her as more than a detached void agent. It points toward Xal'atath whispering to the people of Karesh, promising salvation, guiding them toward a ritual that shattered their world, struck at Dimensius, and helped release her from the grasp of the Void Lord. That is the first hook. She did not simply arrive after the tragedy. She was inside it. And that makes every version of the story dangerous. If Xal'atath is telling the truth, then her origin is not simple evil. It is a story of enslavement, rebellion, and a world sacrificed because every other option had already been burned away. She may have been bound to Dimensius. She may have hated what he made her. She may have seen Karesh as the only chance to break the chain. In that version, Xal'atath is terrifying because she understands desperation from the inside. She knows exactly what a doomed civilization will do when someone offers it one last impossible choice. But if she is lying, the story is even darker, because then Karesh was not her wound. It was her first successful sales pitch. Think about what she offers. Not peace, not mercy, not even victory in the normal sense. She offers people the feeling that their destruction can mean something. That is an almost perfect void manipulation. Not give up and die. Not serve me because I am stronger. Something subtler. Your world is already lost, but I can make the loss useful. I can make the end feel like agency. That is the same kind of horror that makes Xal'atath different from a giant cosmic beast. Dimensius devours, the old gods corrupt, but Xal'atath persuades. She lets mortals believe the final decision was theirs, and that is why the Karesh story matters for Midnight. Because Azeroth is now approaching the same kind of test. The Sunwell burns at the heart of Quel'Thalas as one of the brightest concentrations of light in the world. The Blood Elves rebuilt around it after genocide, addiction, betrayal, and loss. It is not just a power source. It is proof that their civilization survived. To Xal'atath, that kind of hope is not an obstacle. It is material. Ka'aresh teaches us how she thinks. She does not need to start with despair. She can start with the thing a people loves most: their home, their identity, their promise that what they suffered was not the end of the story. Then she waits until that love becomes leverage. On Karesh, that leverage may have been the planet itself, a world on the edge of being consumed, a people transformed by their own attempt to survive, a Void Lord too powerful to face directly, and Xal'atath whispering that the only path left was a ritual so catastrophic it would shatter the world to strike the monster inside it. That is why the phrase, "the world the Void destroyed," is not enough. The Void attacked Karesh, Dimensius consumed it, but Xal'atath may have taught its people how to turn the death of their own world into a weapon. And once you understand that, her interest in Azeroth becomes much more frightening. She is not looking at Azeroth like a battlefield. She is looking at it like a repetition, a world soul, a cosmic power source, civilizations that define themselves by surviving impossible disasters, heroes who always believe there is one more sacrifice that can save everyone. That is the exact kind of story Xal'atath knows how to bend. This is also why her connection to the ethereals feels so important. The ethereals are not random, void-flavored allies. They are walking proof of Karesh's wound. Every bandage, every arcane wrap, every drifting merchant prince and broker echoes the same origin, a people who survived by becoming something else. If any survivor, faction, or desperate believer is drawn to Xal'atath now, that does not necessarily mean they have forgotten what happened. It may mean they remember it too well. Memory can become loyalty when a survivor believes the person who helped destroy everything was also the person who gave them a reason to keep moving. That is the emotional trap. Xal'atath does not have to be innocent to be worshipped. She only has to make herself necessary. And World of Warcraft has been quietly building toward that version of her for a long time. As a dagger, she learned how heroes think. She watched priests carry her into wars, raids, rituals, and forbidden places. She spoke in riddles, gave just enough truth to be useful, and waited. That patience is the real continuity between the blade and the Harbinger. The dagger was not a prison that made her passive. It was an education. When she finally walked free, she did not behave like a creature tasting power for the first time. She behaved like someone returning to a plan she had never stopped refining. Karesh explains why. Because if this was where she first learned to weaponize doomed hope, then Azeroth is not her first attempt. It is her masterpiece. And that brings us back to the question Supremacy leaves hanging over everything. Was Xal'atath a victim of Dimensius? Was she his harbinger? Was she the betrayer who helped destroy Karesh? Or did she become all three before anyone understood what she really was? That uncertainty is the point. The most effective lie is not completely false. It carries enough pain that people hesitate to reject it. Xal'atath may truly have suffered under Dimensius. She may truly have wanted freedom. She may truly have helped Karesh strike back against the Void Lord. But none of that makes her safe. It only means her cruelty may have a history. That is what makes her more dangerous than a monster who only wants to eat the world. Xal'atath understands stories. She understands how people explain their worst choices to themselves. She understands that a civilization will forgive almost anything if the alternative is admitting the sacrifice meant nothing. And now she is bringing that knowledge to the brightest wound in Azeroth, the Sunwell, Quel'Thalas, the place where survival became identity. If Ka'arish was her first lesson, midnight may be her final exam. Not because she wants to repeat the exact ritual, but because she has already seen what happens when a people can be convinced that destroying the thing they love is the only way to save what remains. That is the nightmare hidden inside Xal'atath's origin. She may not be trying to conquer Azeroth by force. She may be trying to make Azeroth choose its own undoing. And if she can make that choice feel noble, desperate, and unavoidable, then she will not need to devour the world. She will only need to whisper, just like she did on Karish.